Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information with some laughs, might I add. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be playing Kellan, and I'm calling this deck Big and Tall.
Tall, thick, a big, physically big family.
His adventure side lets you search for an aura or equipment, and then on the creature side, he has Double Strike. It's a 2/2. Other creatures control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to him. So that's where the big part comes into play. Everything in this list is $5 or less, but that comes with its drawbacks, which I'll talk about later when I'm going through each card and why I picked the card to be in here. Without further ado, let's get into my card choices. Bloodforge Battle Axe. It's great because it copies itself and it can get that count really nice and high to give that anthem for your other creatures, and it makes your commander even bigger. Chain of the Rocks. This is an oldie and a goodie. I was playing Standard back in the day when this card came out, and it was pretty awesome. Pretty excited to play it in this deck for a whole $1. What it does is it's just a removal spell that's efficiently costed. You just need a mountain in play in order for you to use it. Griff Spoon. I like this aura because it gives evasion with flying, a stat boost, and you can cast it from your graveyard for 4 mana. Really resilient aura. Most people shy away from auras because if the creature it's enchanted to dies, you get 2 for 1, or the more enchantments you have on it, the more you have to lose. Griff Spoon's really safe. On Thin Ice, it's basically another Chain of the Rocks, but for Snowlands. Steel Shaper's Gift is a very great tutor. Lets you get any equipment and put it in your hand and shuffle. When I play tutors, I specifically want them to be put in your hand. If they're at sorcery speed, I like them to be 2 mana or less, which is kind of like a reoccurring theme for a lot of my stuff. I would like my tutors, I like my ramp, and my interaction to be 2 mana or less. I did specify into my hand. I do make exceptions for like things like Vampiric Tutor. Obviously, Vampiric Tutor is way outside the budget and not in the colors. When I do play things without a budget, I include Vampiric Tutor because I can play it on someone else's turn and put it on top of my deck. Same thing with Enlightened Tutor and Worldly Tutor kind of stuff. Swords, Plowshares, efficient removal, a braid, flexible removal, all that glitters. This is going to be one of your auras that turns Kellan into a bigger threat than he already is. I mean, Double Strike is always super scary. You just have to think of it as cutting your commander damage requirement in half because it hits twice. So if you get Kellan up to 11 power, you could one-shot people, and all that glitters is one of those enchantments that make that happen. Another Mana Rock, Blackblade Reforged. This is just an equipment that scales really nice into mid and late game and equips for 3 to legendary creatures, which I run a fair amount of outside of just my commander. Another efficient Mana Rock, Captain's Claws. So this is part of the go wide strategy. Remember when I said I wanted to incorporate all aspects of Kellan into my game plan? Captain's Claws fits that perfectly because it gets my equipment count / aura count higher, and it also puts a body into play to get that anthem effect. And I try to get as many of these kinds of auras and equipments put into this deck as I could. The other plus side is if I could put that token into play tapped and attacking. Unfortunately, it turns out a lot of cards that are putting bodies into play and our equipment are super expensive. I unfortunately didn't get to include as many of these types of equipment as I would have liked to take advantage of the creature anthem effect on Kellan.
Bummer.
I at least got to put 3 of them in here. Cold Steel Heart, another Mana Rock, Felwar Stone, Mana Rock, Fighter Class. Now this is another tutor that puts things into your hand for 2 mana, but it has even better benefits. Once you hit level 2, which is only 3 mana, equip abilities cost 2 less to activate, meaning you could hit 0. I look at this as a really dense tutor that takes one of your greatest weaknesses of equipment costs and fixes that problem for you. Jorkadine, first Gold Warden. When I was designing this deck at the very beginning, my creature count was really low. I had to dig a little deep and take away card slots and replace them with creatures, if that makes sense. So Jorkadine draws you cards once his power hits 4 or greater. If you have 2 equipment on your commander, you get there. Every time he attacks, you get to draw a card. It takes up a card slot of card advantage. If you hadn't seen any of my previous deck building videos, I try to, get density on a card by having things fill in multiple slots. Cole the Forge Master. This guy has a very specific purpose. It protects your commander in a pseudo way. If your commander should die, it gets returned to your hand. The beauty of this is it enables you to recast Kellan for the adventure side and you get another brutal artifact or enchantment and get to use it for your disposal. It's almost better than returning it to play, if that makes sense, because who doesn't want to tutor again? Get that value of casting your commander for the adventure side again. So that's a cool little tech. Trailblazer's Boots makes your commander unblockable. It has non-basic land walk. I assume every person and their mother that's playing commander has some kind of non-basic land for utility, and that is why people play Trailblazer's Boots. Mary Esquire Rohan. This is another creature that fits the card advantage slot. Card advantage and a rock. Mizium Mortars is a single target removal spell and a board wipe. Open the Armory, another efficient tutor. Pure Steel Paladin. This is another dense creature where you get card advantage, and if you have 3 or more artifacts, it reduces your equip cost to 0. Fixing another weakness. I have a lot of these effects to deal with the weaker sides of equipments. I guess Voltron traditionally is just one creature, and you just suit it up and beat someone to death with it. With this deck, if your lethal attacker gets killed, you just move things over to the next thing. You make a new threat. And that's where you're kind of breaking the tradition of Voltron, is that every creature you play will turn into something scary down the road.
He has no weaknesses.
Spirit Mantle gives your creature protection from all creatures, so unblockable. Sram, Senior Artificer, another card advantage slot on a creature. Swiftfoot Boots, Hexproof and Haste. Sword of the Animist. I'm kind of treating this like a pseudo rock. It's not the best kind of rock, but it gets my equipment count up and it lets me ramp a little bit. I'm playing it. Something I want to mention, attack triggers. So because my commander has double strike, I think a common thing that new players mistake is that double strike does not give you double attack triggers. Now, if it's a damage, like the swords of whatever protection pair colors, those would trigger twice because you're essentially hitting someone once for the first strike and you're dealing damage on the regular strike. That's all I wanted to mention. I'm going to clear that up for any new folks that don't have a whole lot of experience playing Magic, and that's perfectly okay. Efficient Mana Rock, Thran Power Suit. This is another payoff card for your auras and equipment. And it also gives your equipped creature ward too. I've never actually got to play this card before. I haven't played a Voltron strategy in a long time because this came out in Brothers War, which was oddly enough 3 or 4 sets ago. And it doesn't seem that long, but this set came out this year. Magic likes to pump out a lot of products. Tybalt's Trickery, it's a counter spell in red. Winds of Abandon, it's a single target removal that also doubles as a board wipe. Akiri Furious Voyager. This is another creature that fits a card advantage slot, and I can detach a equipment to give that permanent indestructible to end of turn. It doubles as protection for my commander. Enduro Flame of the West. Now this is another one of those equipments that when it's attached to a creature and it attacks, I get 2 1/1 attacking spirits. Arden. This is another way where I could bypass equipping and auras to something new. Bladehold War Whip, purely playing this for the reduction. Champion's Helm makes your creature resilient and a stat boost. Very flexible removal spell with Chaos Warp. Danitha Capation Paragon makes your aura and equipped spells cost 1 less, and there are a lot of them. Draconic Destiny, this is another aura that came out in Brothers War that I haven't got to play yet, and it's really great because it gives its enchanted creature +1/+1, flying in haste, and fire breathing, where the fire breathing doesn't require a red pip, it only requires a colorless pip, meaning you could play this in multicolored decks and get full use out of it. I think whoever designed this card was really intuitive about the game and really involved in it. The other beautiful part about this is it returns itself back to your hand once the creature this is enchanted to dies. And that seems to be a theme of my auras, is that they all return themselves. Generous Gift is flexible removal. At the trade-off, you give them a 3/3 Elephant. Grasp of Fate, this is one of my all-time favorite white removal spells. When it ETBs, you exile a permanent from each of your opponents. So it's a 3-for-1 for 3 mana. You're removing a non-land permanent for 1 mana with that rate. It's a pretty sweet deal. Alaxon Warhammer, keep my life total nice and high and gets evasion with trample. Nettlecyst is another payoff for my strategy. Savine's Reclamation. Since my commander CMC is 3, I could take full advantage of these kinds of effects that take any permanent that are 3 or less and plop it into the field. It's just to make your deck more resilient. I already mentioned the weaknesses of Voltron strategies, and that's edict effects and I guess removal in general. Like, this is one of those decks where if you cut off the head, the snake dies kind of a thing. But since I loaded my deck up with lots of these kinds of effects, you should be able to battle your way through it. On the first half, you return 1 permanent. On the flashback activation, you return 2 things. It's a really sweet sorcery. I've been playing it ever since it came out. I think it's a crime that it's only 41 cents to play. It's worth every penny in my experience. You could also get back fetch lands if you are playing fetch lands. I have used this thing just to outramp my opponents. I didn't have anything else better to do. It's just a very useful spell. Citadel Sword of Valerian puts another token into play, tapped and attacking. Perfect. So that's my third one of the deck. I wish I could do more.
I wish I could give you more. You deserve more.
Skyclave Apparition. It's a creature that fills up a removal slot. Hits any non-land permanent that's 4 or less. Sarnheim Courser acts like Danitha. Reduces my artifact enchantment spells by 1. Tenza Goda's Maul on your commander. Gives +3/+3 and trample. Aowen Lady of Rohan. This reduces equip abilities by 1. And then on the beginning of combat, a target creature of choice can get Vigilance or First Strike. If they're equipped, creature gets both instead. Since your commander really has double strike, I guess you're getting the Vigilance. But as you've heard me mention before, I don't necessarily care about that. I'm only playing this purely for the equip cost reduction. At least it's also a creature, so I could throw stuff on her should my commander be dead or something terrible happens. Court of Ardenvale is another one of those pieces that make your deck resilient because it could return something 3 or less from your graveyard to hand. And if you maintain the Monarchy, you get to put it into the battlefield instead. And Monarchy is great because it also fulfills a card advantage slot. Flametongue Kavu. It's a body that does 4 damage to a creature, so it takes up a removal slot. Grafted Exoskeleton, this reduces the commander damage required in half, and because your commander already has double strike, Kellan would only need to be a 5/5 in order to finish them off. Unfortunately, Kellan's a 2/2, so you need 1 extra piece to get him there, but it shouldn't be too hard. Halvar, God of Battle. I will never probably be playing this on its creature side. Instead, I'll be playing it for equipment side. The +2 increase and the vigilance is nice, but I'm playing it for the bottom ability. Whenever the equipped creature dies, you return to your hand. Kind of the same tech with Cole. You increase the odds of winning later because you're just getting more gas to pour on the open flame. Hammer Nizan, stat increase, makes your commander indestructible, and whenever an equipment comes into play, you could auto-equip it to a creature. It's really darn good. It's a very dense spell in this deck. Sarah Paragon, this is another creature that has that magic number of being able to return permanents 3 or less to play. Shonen of the Scalds, I love this impulse effect. You're paying 4 mana to exile the top 4 cards, and you have until your following turn to play or cast them. When you play impulse effects, pro tip, don't play a land drop from your hand. Play the Shonen or whatever impulse first, and then play the land, hopefully from that exile pile. Try to get the maximum value off of this, because just say you exile 3 lands. At max, you'll only get to play 2. But if you played a land from your hand before you dropped Showdown, then it becomes 1. So you lose out on resources. Glorybringer. I've been loving this dragon ever since it came out in Amonkhet. It has a really special place in my heart. I've been playing this dragon ever since. If you don't know what it does, it has flying and haste, and when it attacks, you can exert it, and then you do 4 damage to a non-dragon creature. Exertion means the next time you'd untap this, it doesn't untap. Kind of like those icy counters that you see in Wild Drain or other stuff right now. You basically put one of those equivalents on your own creature for the trade-off of doing that effect every other turn. I just like it because I get to use that effect the turn I need it. Or you could play this and prevent other people from playing their stuff. If I never use the exertion ability, they're going to be a little hesitant because they're going to know I'm going to eventually blow it up. So it can buy you a lot of time in that kind of headspace or head games that you play with your opponents. Hexplate Wallbreaker, gives the equipped creature +2/+2, but whenever the equipped creature attacks, if it's the first combat step, you untap each attacking creature, and after this phase, there's an additional combat step. It combos really nicely with my other equipment that puts bodies into play, because it takes those into account and untaps them, and it lets me do that again. Honestly, this is probably a really good top end, and probably gonna be one of your finishers in this game. Mantle of Ancients, it's a recovery plan. Should someone get one of those Vandal Blasts off or a Bane of Progress, Mantle of the Ancients is like a 1/2 gut punch for them, because you return everything back to play attached to the creature that this is enchanted to, and hopefully you just finish him off, the person who did that to you. Sun Titan, it's another one of those effects that returns the magic number of mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. In total, you're running 4 of these kinds of effects. It's going to be really hard to keep you down as a Voltron player, where the typical equation for dealing with you is just killing the thing that's equipped and enchanted with a bunch of stuff. The other resilient piece in this deck is that there are going to be a lot of creatures on your board. You don't even need your commander to do the job. You could just switch it to a new threat, and people don't have enough removal to, realistically keep one-shotting your stuff. They would have to have board wipes. Let's talk about the utility lands. Axgard Armory, 4 mana. You could sack it to search your library for an aura or an equipment. So meaning you could get both. That's a pretty good deal. I take that as a 5 mana investment to tutor for 2 things. If you have nothing else better to do and you had nothing to play from your hand, then you just activate this. Igandro, Seed of the Empire, it's another removal slot. You get to do 4 damage to an attacking or blocking creature. Pretty sweet. And it comes in untapped if you want to play it as a land. Hall of the Heliod's Generosity. This lets you put enchantment cards back on top of your library. Even though we talked about a lot of my enchantments return themselves, there are still ways that they could end up in your graveyard and inaccessible. Ministirith, this is my favorite of the low tier lands. If you attack with at least 2 or more creatures this turn, you can tap 2 mana in itself to draw a card. Comes out untapped if you have a legendary creature. A little more of a clunky clause, but I think the card advantage piece that's relatively easy to do on an aggro deck is quite exciting. Roadside Reliquary can give you a lot of card advantage. You could draw 1 card if you have 1 artifact. You could draw 2 cards if you have an artifact and an enchantment. And because you have a lot of pieces that could also return your land, Sanctum of Eternity, this is for when your hand is completely empty and you have nothing else better to do. You could use Sanctum of Eternity to return your commander back to your hand and then do the adventure and recast him and then have more gas to play with. And that's it. The rest are basics and lands that tap for both colors and come in untapped. $116 is the true value of this deck. 41 ticks. So this is basically the same price of buying a sealed deck on Moto, but you're getting a heck of a lot better of a deck because it's been handcrafted by someone who actually plays a lot of Magic. I don't think the folks that design decks at Wizards, they're not exactly doing it for functionality. They're doing it for monetary gain. They can't put all these good cards in a single deck. Otherwise, you could cause the market to crash. But as you can see, you could play a lot of these for dirt cheap. So the market's already crashed. Why do you even bother anymore with withholding and not trying to crash the market?
You're already doing it.
I'm happy as a Magic player. I like building my decks for cheap and have them be competitive at the same time. Money investment though, I only paid $4 because I actually owned all of these and actually play all of these already. I hope you all enjoyed. Everyone have a good night. Take care now. Bye.